So let's talk about the new game system that came out today. Well, kind of game system. I'm talking about the iPhone 15 Pro, and I know you may be rolling your eyes right now, but I'll admit this caught my attention after they did their Apple showcase, where they talked about a bunch of things within their ecosystem. But when they went over all the aspects of the phone, they focused in a bit more on the gaming side, and it wasn't about just gacha games. This is about games we're playing right now on our PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series system, and I think it surprised people because it was running a bit better than we were expecting, and I wanted to talk about some of that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if new here to the Spawn Wave channel. And you know what? Let me know if you'd be curious to see maybe a video around the iPhone 15 Pro. I'm kind of on the fence. My phone is several years old now, but I don't know. I haven't really thought much about going over to the iPhone side from Android. Nonetheless, I do have devices within Apple's ecosystem with something like the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, and they are very impressive systems, especially with the M1 and the M2 chips and all of this. They definitely are able to perform tasks that you wouldn't expect for the amount of power that they draw. However, in this case, we're talking about the chipset that they have in their iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. And that's the A17 Pro. Now, the biggest jump over the A16 is actually the GPU. And that's pointed out completely by many sites that just cover Apple, and that's like 9 to 5 Mac, for example. And this is a slide that Apple released with the 6 cores for the Pro class GPU, shader architecture they designed, up to 20% faster over that A16, improved efficiency, mesh shading, and one of the biggest things that they really wanted to show off was ray tracing, which is funny because ray tracing's still in that weird spot where you can see that it's better, but it's not a wow factor that makes you go, well, this is completely worth the frame rate hit that you take. I feel like most people out there would just turn it off if it meant going from, say, 30 frames per second up to 60 frames per second. But maybe just over time and as technology continues to advance, ray tracing is just something we take for granted because it's available across the board for these different things. But it was still very impressive to see it pointed out for a cell phone. And that's something that I think people really need to remember here. This is a multi-purpose device that at its core should be about communicating with people through phone calls, text messages, what have you. And in this case, it'll be playing games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 4 Remake, and even Death Stranding. Now, there is a video out there of a person actually playing Resident Evil, I think it was Resident Evil Village, on the 15 Pro, and it was fairly impressive, although there are some drawbacks clearly. One, it is locked to 30 FPS, which, I mean, we do see that on devices that are a bit lower end in general. Like, if it's something's developed for the Xbox One and the PS4, it's probably going to be capped at 30 FPS, but the other part is it was also locked to roughly 720p. All this, I'm sure, playing into the memory bandwidth that's available to the A17 Pro in that cell phone. But still, I think the idea that, well, two things. One, your cell phone's playing it, and two, Apple is getting more serious with gaming to where they're clearly working with Capcom, as Capcom has moved Resident Evil Village over to the M1, the M2 series in the MacBook, because I did run it on my MacBook Pro, and I was pretty shocked at what it was able to do. Again, considering these are low-powered chips that are in these devices, and it makes you think more about the future of what Apple can do as they continue to develop for these systems. There are still many things that Apple needs to overcome with the iPhone and just in general mobile gaming when it comes to being taken seriously in this regard. The controls is a big one, since touchscreen doesn't really translate well to a lot of these larger titles. And if you just take a look at the layout that they had presented for Resident Evil 4 Remake, it looks like a complete mess of buttons on the display that you're supposed to be looking at in the first place. So people will use attachments for their devices that you don't necessarily carry around with you all the time. And the other aspect to me is that you have to overcome the idea that it's not a gotcha free-to-play style game that are incredibly popular on iOS, right? So it's, can you get people in mobile gaming to pay $30, $40, $50 for an experience like this that's primarily going to be played on your cell phone? Although I guess if it's all tied together with, say, your MacBook or your Mac Pro or what have you, and then you can also take it over to your phone, then maybe it's like, okay, this makes more sense for me considering there is convenience involved with being able to take the game wherever I want. And the biggest thing to really keep an eye on here is if Apple gets serious and is able to continue bringing in more of these developers, as we are seeing Kojima come over, Ubisoft, Capcom. I mean, think about this. This A17 Pro is going to be using the Decima engine with Death Stranding. But if that really starts to catch on and actually work, you're going to see more and more developers flock to this ecosystem, because there are just so many people who are buying and using iPhones right now. I mean, look at the sales of the iPhone each year is incredible. We talk about how it's a big deal in console gaming if you get to 100 million units sold for your entire lifetime of the system over the course of 6 or 7 years or something. The iPhone shipped 225 million devices last year alone. So you take that into account and you're like, all right, there's a lot of potential to reach many, many customers out there with your one game. And then you realize, oh, wait, they also have 1.8 billion active users. That's like mind-boggling stuff to consider, but it makes sense why you see these developers running to really a chip that can actually run the game. Not on the level of what we see right now with a PS5 or an Xbox Series, but it functions. And if they can sell a game to, I mean, this large audience, even a small sliver, a small percentage of that, if they want to buy in, is completely worth the development costs. But the thing I am curious about, are we watching Apple right now just kind of sow the seeds for them potentially making an actual game system? This has come up a couple of times, and I'm not 100% sold on it. However, Apple probably could make a run at it if they wanted to. I mean, they have the money clearly to do it if they want to, and they could tie it into an ecosystem with, again, a large number of people who are already invested. And I mean, would people really go, oh, wow, that's ridiculous if it's a $600 system from Apple? No, because a lot of their devices already are kind of there as these really are viewed as these expensive systems. So a $500 or $600 device from them to be entering the game market would feel like it was actually kind of cheap for that user base. But they still have a long way to go when it comes to the mobile side and trying to introduce these large titles that are viewed as console level. But it's interesting just to see where we are right now with these mobile chips, and then watch really the diminishing returns kick in for the higher end, because I don't really see a lot of people running around looking for 8K TVs. It almost feels like we're kind of peaking right now when it comes to the resolution battle, that resolution war that we hear about, where we got to get to 4K, or we got to go to 1080p, then we got to go to 4K. Kind of feels like we're all pretty good at 4K, and where do you go from there other than just improving the frame rates, adding in ray tracing? You're pretty much good, and then you can see these mobile chips maybe continue to catch up as we go. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Were you surprised to hear about these pretty large, again, console quality games going to a cell phone? And what do you think the future holds for Apple as they appear to get more and more interested in the gaming side of things? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.